When I was approaching the age of 7, I returned home from school one day with a request from my parents that I could start a new club. You know, the hobby that I was really interested in taking up at age 7 came as a bit of a surprise to my mum and my dad. And it comes as a bit of a surprise that I'm actually sharing it with you this morning. But when I was almost 7, I asked my mum and dad if I could sign up for the local ballroom dancing club. I know, yeah. There's a picture about to come up on the screen now. Thankfully, my mum and dad did not own a camera when I was 7, which means there's no photographic evidence of this, all right? You'll be pleased to see. Maybe it's not going to come up on the screen. But do you know what? My lessons were going obviously so well because at the age of 7, I was asked to take part in, this boy here, I can only imagine at some point in his young years, had to go up to his parents and say, Mum and Dad, I'd really like to sign up for ballroom dancing lessons. And they, like my mum and dad, let me do what it was that I was really passionate about doing. Now, I was obviously doing pretty well because my dance teacher, Mrs. Martin, entered me for a dance competition, all right? And this was a prestigious dance competition. Now, if you've got any Strictly fans in the room, all right, you will know that the place that you want to dance, if you are a ballroom dancer, is the Tower Ballroom in Blackpool. Ooh, yeah, okay. The Tower Ballroom in Blackpool, okay, is the ballroom mecca. And at age 7, my mum and dad took me on the 131-mile journey to Blackpool from Middlesbrough. And I was going to be dancing. I'd been selected by Mrs. Martin to dance with Nicola Martin, yes, the dance teacher's daughter, to dance in this competition. And you know what? It was at that moment when we arrived at the Blackpool Tower Ballroom that I realized that I didn't want to do ballroom dancing anymore. In fact, I didn't want to dance at all. And you know what I did? I ran and I hid. I ran and I hid, leaving Nicola Martin, my dance partner, sans partenaire, okay? I don't know why I said it in French, but I thought it sounded good when I was prepping for this, okay? But my Nicola Martin was left without a partner for this competition. All right? I don't even know if she actually danced in the competition or not. But I ran and hid. Now, this morning, I want to talk about a man who we've been talking about for a number of weeks now. And he was given a great opportunity that he just didn't feel that he could go through with. He doubted that he would be capable of doing. Just as I felt at age 7, I was incapable to be able to dance with my dance partner, Nicola Martin. We've been reading the story of Moses, the Old Testament hero, and despite his unconventional upbringing, having been adopted at just 3 months old when his mother felt that she could no longer keep him safe any longer, and after as a grown man, having had much privilege in his life, he actually made one of the biggest mistakes possible. He actually killed a man and then fled. But you know what? God proves through the story of Moses' life that he can take hold of a man's life and has great plans and purposes, no matter where he's come from and no matter what he has done. Now, if you know the story of Moses' life, you will know that God had a great big plan for his life. And if you don't know the story, well, you could read it in the Bible in the Old Testament book of Exodus. But we're going to find out a little bit more about him this morning, so hold on in there. Now, Moses, who had fled to Egypt, is now living at this stage in the story in the wilderness area of Midian, which is believed to be in kind of modern-day Saudi Arabia, so if you can picture where that is, across a few borders away from Egypt. And he's married now, and he has become a shepherd. So he's tending to flocks out in this countryside, this desert region. And it's one day while he's out there tending to these flocks that he has this incredible encounter. You know, he sees a bush that is on fire, and he's intrigued by this, and he walks up to the bush, and from within the bush, the voice of God begins to speak to him. What an incredible experience. And it says that though the bush was on fire, this is what the Bible says, it did not burn up. Curious incident, right? And God, from within this fire, says to Moses, here's what I want you to do. He says, so now go, this is God speaking. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. And so this is where we find Moses right now. So let's see what Moses' response was to this. And they've had a little bit of help from a few people in the church this week for our Bible reading. So we're going to see videos appear on the screen. So watch in and you can read along as well. Let's go.
And Moses answered, what if they do not believe me and listen to me? And they say, the Lord did not appear to you.
Then the Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? A staff, he replied. The Lord said, throw it on the ground. Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it.
Then the Lord said to him, reach out and take it by the tail. So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand.
This said the Lord, so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has appeared to you.
You know, Moses has been given this opportunity by God himself in the previous chapter. He's going to return to Egypt, the land where there's a death warrant out for his head, okay, for what he did, and he wants him to undertake this massive task. Now, the context here, if you've not been around for the last few weeks, is that the people group that Moses was born into, the Israelites, have been enslaved in Egypt. So they've been the slave labor that has created this great architecture that we know in the Egyptian landscape. And Moses has been asked to return and demand that his people are released from slavery. Now, we're not just talking about just one or two or even a handful of slaves here at that moment. We're actually talking about a few 100,000 slaves that Moses is demanding is set free. This is going to be really noticeable. So who at this point is with Moses, doubting his own ability? Who's with Moses, doubting that you'd ever be able to achieve such a task if God was to give you such a task? I mean, who is Moses? We know he's a shepherd boy. He's living in the countryside. He's a nobody. He's a killer on the run. He's a married man with a family and responsibility. I mean, God is suggesting that he returns to Egypt, and this is massive. There's absolutely no way that he feels that he can undertake it. Pretty incredible, right? So it's no wonder when Moses said this. What if they don't believe me? Or listen to me? Can you feel that anxiety that Moses has got there? He's feeling inadequate. He's got self-doubt that he, a shepherd boy, could ever do such a thing. But look at what God has got to say to him. God says to him, what is in your hand? What is in your hand, Moses? Moses says, well, it's a stick. He's holding a crook, a shepherd's crook, a staff. And God says, yes, a stick. Moses, you've got a stick in your hand, and I'm going to do something pretty amazing with it. God says, throw it down on the ground. Throw it down on the ground, Moses. I'm going to show you exactly what I can do. Now, I don't know about you, but at this point, I think if I was Moses, I would have been a bit skeptical, all right? Because God is saying, right, you're going to go into Pharaoh, probably the most powerful man, definitely the most powerful man on the earth at the time, as far as Moses is concerned. And you're going to walk in with your stick, and God says, throw it on the ground. Now, if I was Moses, I might be thinking, God, yeah, I see what you're doing here. God, you're saying that if I go in and I throw my stick down, then it'll be some kind of like alpha male, psych him out sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, if I throw down my stick in an act of aggression, maybe Pharaoh's going to think, oh yeah, this guy means business. But then if I was Moses, I might then start thinking, but God, you do know that Pharaoh has these big burly guards, right? He's got these big burly guards who stand out guarding the palace throne room. And at the click of his fingers, at my act of aggression throwing down the stick, well, these guards are going to pull me in. They're going to at best, I'm going to end up in prison like old Uncle Joseph. Well, you know what? That isn't actually what the Bible says that Moses thought. But it would have been my thought process, right? And anyway, Moses, being a pretty faithful sort of guy, obviously did trust God in this moment because he did do what God said, and he threw down his staff, and God begins to give him an insight into his power and authority over every living thing, over every element of this world. You know, the God who created the heavens and the earth by gathering dust particles and threw them into space and created stars and planets, who took the dust from the earth and created mountains and rivers, who took the dust and created animals and mankind, here in this moment took that stick, that dead piece of tree, and he created a snake from it. Now, it's just a small show of his power and his authority. And you know what? I've got a theory here that God was trying to make a power play with Pharaoh here. This is just a theory. I've not read it in any commentary, all right? So you can take it or leave it, all right? But I think when God was throwing down that staff and when it turned into a snake, I don't know if you've seen in ancient Egypt, this symbol, this sign of the uraeus, which is the rearing cobra, all right, is an emblem that ancient Egyptian pharaohs would have worn. And it depicted and it showed their authority, their sovereignty, their divinity. When the bearer of the rearing cobra, the uraeus, wore that sign, they were saying to the world that I am God. Well, you know, when Moses threw down that staff, when God said throw it down, I think that God was saying, I'm going to challenge Pharaoh's authority here. Now, it is just a theory, so take it or leave it, and we will move on. Now, I'm sure that Moses must have been pretty impressed with this miraculous sign. And by the fact that he actually does go and then do what it says later in the passage, God says, well, now pick up the snake. And he picks it up. He actually picks it up by the tail, which I don't know if anyone's ever held a snake before, but my understanding is that you don't pick it up by the tail, all right? Because the head can come around and do whatever snakes like to do at that moment. But he does. He takes it by the tail in faith, and it turns back into a stick. But even with that having happened, I'm guessing that Moses still wasn't quite ready. He wasn't quite convinced to be able to go out and to carry out what God was calling him to do. Now we read in the next verses that Moses actually needed another sign. I mean, he's had the stick thing, but God says to him, Moses, you need a bit more help here. Put your hand inside your cloak. We can only imagine Moses must have been wearing some sort of long woolen cloak. And Moses says, put your hand in. So he puts his hand inside faithfully. And when he pulls out his hand again, the Bible says that his hand was white and leprous. Okay? Pretty scary sight to see that your hand has changed in a moment. And then God says, put it back in again, Moses. So he puts it back in, and as he pulls it out, his hand now is no longer covered in those white, flaking scales. Another sign of God's miraculous power over life and over creation. But you know what? Leprosy was the most feared illness of that period. If you had leprosy, you'd become an outcast. It was contagious. And so I think that God was demonstrating, Moses, if you go into Pharaoh's court, if you show them this sign, that I have power over life and healing and restoration, then he would be demonstrating that God can overcome something that no other person can overcome by curing that terrible disease. These signs are given to Moses as leverage to Pharaoh when he asks him to let the Hebrews leave slavery. But was Moses convinced? Well, hold on, because we'll find out. Now, I wonder, do you struggle with self-confidence, with doubt, anxiety? Do you struggle to believe that you can do everything that you have responsibility to do, or everything that you would like to be able to do? I know I don't. I know that I've got anxiety and self-doubt. Even standing here this morning, even as I was preparing for it this week, even though I've stood on this stage dozens of times before, everything within me is saying, you're an imposter. They're never going to listen to you. Someone's bound to stand up and point out that you do not belong up on that stage there, Chris. It leads to all sorts of horrible things going on in my body, which I don't need to describe today. But, yeah. But that's exactly what it feels like. Doubt can set in. Now, I wonder, do you have doubts? Doubts that you can actually live the life that you have been called to live. Doubts to be the husband or wife that you need to be, or to be the parent, or to be the employee, or to pick up your passion that God has placed in your heart and actually become a champion or ambassador for it. And even though we've seen miraculous things happen in our lives, just like Moses has, maybe you've got stories of the way that you've seen God has been with you before. Maybe you understand who God is and his authority. You still come to a place where you think, I just can't do it. I can't do this, just like Moses did. Well, guess what? So did Moses. And Moses tries to wriggle his way out of what God is asking him to do. And we're going to hear read a little bit more of what is to come.
Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past, nor since you've spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue."
The Lord said to them, "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, said the Lord?
Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say." But Moses said, "Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else."
Everyone who has taken part in those videos for me this week and for the effort that you did put in for that. So Moses is trying to wriggle out of what God has given him to do. He's making excuses. And I mean, even though he's actually speaking direct with God from this blazing bush, because this is still like Moses at the burning bush moment, okay? And even though he's seen these incredible signs of the staff thing happening and turn into a snake and the hand thing in the jacket thing, all right, he's seen those things. And then God has said to him, I'll be with you. I'm here. You can do this. He still tries to wriggle out of it. Did you see what his response was in that video there? He said, "Pardon your servant, Lord, but I'm not very good with words." Pardon your servant, Lord, I'm not very good with words, he says. He's making an excuse. I mean, he's ever so polite, isn't he, when he says it? Pardon your servant, Lord. All right? But he's trying to wriggle out of his responsibility. But you know what? It leads me to question something. Was Moses actually being truthful in this moment? I'm not very good with words. Does he really struggle with speech? I mean, there's another part of the Bible in the New Testament where an early follower of Jesus called Stephen actually writes something about Moses that makes me think, I wonder if that was actually true. Let's read it together. He says this, when Moses was born, this is Stephen, right? This is the account that Stephen is speaking. He says, when Moses was born, he was no ordinary child. For 3 months he was cared for by his family, and when he was placed outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him in and brought him up as her own son. Moses was educated in all kinds of wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and action. Interesting, right? Moses is saying, I'm not very good at speaking. And yet this guy, Stephen, is saying he was well versed in public speaking. He was powerful in it, it even says. So was Moses a man who struggled with words or a man who didn't feel up to the task? It's a good question. Well, either way, we know that he's making excuses for not faithfully following God's call on his life. I wonder, are there excuses that you're making for not following God's call on your life? Do you find that really your responsibility is just too hard? Or have you given up trying because you've tried before and it didn't really work out? Or do you keep telling yourself, do you know what? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. I am the way I am. I can't really do it any longer. Well, listen, God knows all the challenges that you're facing, all the challenges that we face. And he knew the challenges that Moses faced. And yet, knowing Moses' challenge, he said this to him. Who gave human beings their mouths? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you to speak, and I will teach you what to say. Ouch, what a comeback, right? Who gave human beings their mouths? God, I'm saying, I'm nervous to do this, and you say, I created that mouth. I created that mouth. Now go. You know, if I was God, I don't think I'd have the patience that he has. I'd have probably said, nah, forget it, mate. Nah, forget it. I'm moving on. I've got someone else who can do this for me. Would you be like that? Just me then. Okay? You know, God does not give up on us. He knows our beginning from the end. He knows where we've come from. He knows what we've been through. And he knows where we're going. And so God is willing us on to live our best life. To be the person that he created us to be. God says he will help you with whatever it is you need to be able to do in life. Just as he did Moses. Now, surely this was enough to convince Moses, right? He's had the burning bush, he's had the stick and the snake thing, he's had the hand in the jacket thing, and now he's being told that God will help him to say the words that he needs to say. And Moses' response is, pardon your servant, Lord, please send someone else. I think there are people here who can relate to this today. You know, you believe in that creator of the universe, the one who created everything. You have seen those miracles in your lives. You know what the Bible says for those who follow him that he will do. You hear this story today, and yet you still fail to believe that he can help you with your stuff because it's just too big, it's too hard. I can't do this. The next bit of the passage is a little bit of a challenge for us. When we see God's response, the Lord says this. The passage says this, Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses. Whoa. The Lord's anger. Many of us find it hard to believe, don't we, that the Lord would get angry. But here it is. God has emotion. You know, God rejoices in the good stuff. He mourns over the sad stuff. And here, he gets angry with Moses. For Moses' inability to see that he can trust him, to have faith to continue. Now we should note here that God's anger is not like my anger. God's anger is not like your anger or Moses' anger. He doesn't fly off the handle and lose it. He doesn't He doesn't get consumed by his anger and his rage like Moses did when he killed that man. He doesn't act rashly. No, God brings the right path and track into people's lives. He brings justice into situations with his anger. It is a righteous and holy anger. It has purpose and it is controlled. God doesn't walk out on Moses. He doesn't rip his head off or cause him pain. No. Instead, he graciously offers Moses a way out. You see, from here we see that God says, why not take your brother Aaron with you on this journey? I mean, you can tell him what to say, because I'm going to put the words in your mouth, but you feel that you can't do it. And then he can go and speak on your behalf. God is acting so graciously here. God sees potential in Moses, and he sees potential in you, and he sees potential in me. He offers his gracious hand to you to be able to do what you've been called to do. Now, this must have worked, because at this stage, Moses then agrees to do what he's been asked to do. And in the next verses, he says that he's going to return to Egypt. He returns home. He gathers up his family. He gathers up his possessions. It says they get on a donkey. I think it must have been one of these kind of 7-seater donkeys or something. People carry a donkey. But he's agreed that he's going to return to Egypt, the place where there's a death warrant out for his life, and he is going to confront Pharaoh. He is going to lead God's people into freedom. And do you know what? God even does this amazing thing. He even meets with Aaron, his brother, and persuades him that he should go out into the wilderness and meet with Moses. And Moses then speaks to Aaron, and he shows him the stick thing, he shows him the hand thing, and Aaron's on board, and they head to Egypt, and they meet with the Israelite people, and they meet with the elders. Let's read what it says here. They meet with the elders of the people, and it says, Moses and Aaron brought together all the elders of the Israelites, and Aaron told them everything the Lord had said to Moses. He also performed the signs before people, and they believed. And when they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped. I wonder if the band could come up and join me. Moses has taken a lot of convincing to believe that he can do this, to accept that God is with him. Maybe you feel a bit like that today. Maybe you feel that you need encouragement upon encouragement. Well, here we go. We see that there's been some encouragement here. When Moses and Aaron go to the leaders and do the stuff that God instructed them to do, he shows them the signs and they believed him. And then those people begin to worship. Can I ask us to stand? In a moment, we're going to sing again. And I'll come back up when we've sung. And I want to just bring a few final thoughts, a few final threads to you. But before I do that, let's look at what the Israelites did when they heard that message. They realized that God cared for them, that he was going to set them free. They bowed down and they worshipped. I wonder if that is our response today. Can we come with a heart of worship, knowing that God is with us through every circumstance? If you are listening to this today and you need to know that God cares for you, that he has a plan for your life, a plan that will use you and your circumstances for good, a plan that will deliver you from whatever is holding you back, then let's worship. Let's make like the Israelite elders did and raise our praise to God. I'll hand over to you guys. Oh, God is so faithful to us. I've spoken in some very general terms about doubts and insecurities. Maybe something has been stirring in you that you're thinking, yeah, maybe I have been reluctant to do what God has given me to do. You know, some of us, we might look at a story like this in Moses and think, oh, maybe God gives everyone one of these huge, intense purposes in life. Maybe my calling, I've just not discovered it. But you know what? This morning, I want to say, just like God said to Moses, what is in your hands? What is in your hands? You know, God took what was in Moses' hands, that dead, bitter tree that was just used for rounding up sheep, and he did something incredible with it. What has God placed in your hands? With Moses' stick, God was able to part the Red Sea. He was able to, when it struck a rock, he produced living water that sustained the Israelites out in the desert. With it, when it was lifted up high, it was used to secure a victory in battle. You know, God's power, when used on a dead piece of wood, produces something that is awesome. What has God placed in your hands this morning? That's my first thing to encourage you with. God has placed responsibilities in your life. Maybe it's your family. I think there's men in this room who think, do you know what, I've given up. I don't think that my dead bit of wood here, the way that I'm a husband to my wife, I don't think it can get any better. I don't think I can help her anymore. Okay? I think there's wives in this room who are thinking, I've given up. I've given up on believing that my husband will ever be the dad that I really want him to be and help me with the kids. I think there's people in this room who've given up dreams and hopes that God has given them. God says, what have I placed in your hand? I will show my glory through your weakness. And the second thing that Moses said to God, he said, I don't think I can do it. Maybe you're thinking that today. And God said, now go, I will help you. Listen, if you will go, if you will pursue what God has given you to do, you can know in assurance that he will be with you. So don't give up. Don't run away. Don't try and hide, because God has placed that thing in your hand for your good and for the other people's good also. And finally today, if you are feeling overwhelmed as Moses was feeling overwhelmed at what it means to live out what God was calling him to do, well, do you know what? Just like Moses had when God said to him, hey, take Aaron along with you. Take your brother along with you. You don't have to do this alone. Well, it is by no coincidence that God has brought you here into this community. God places us in community in a merciful way so that we can do life together, so that we can support one another, so that we can be strong when other people are weak. So look around you, discover who is with me on this journey. God has placed something in your hands for purpose, and he's encouraging you to use it. So step out in courage and in faith, because he is with you.
You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day.